Hello students, now let's get into the art of answer writing session 4. In previous class, we have seen about 3 terms and in today's class, we are going to see the next term or directive, that is explain. So, whenever the word explain has been given in the question, what steps or what are the mechanisms that you must include in your answer writing? So, the first and foremost thing is that whenever the word explain has came, you need to break down the question. So, this is the first part as I already told you, and along with that, you need to explain it mechanisms. You need to explain it mechanisms. Now, in this way of questions, let's see how can we start with the introduction, like how we make our body part ready along with the conclusion. So, the first and foremost question what we are going to discuss here is about the explain the mechanisms of Indian monsoon and highlight the major factors responsible for spatial and temporal variability. So, here let's identify the number of questions that have been discussed here. Now, let's break. So, the first part is mechanism of Indian monsoon and the second part is factors responsible for spatial variability and factors responsible for temporal variability. Now, let's start with the introduction. Now, in these type of question, just have thought on what kind of introduction can we start. Can we start with example kind of introduction or context based introduction, fact based introduction, example based introduction or theory based introduction? So, with what kind of introduction we can start here? So, we can start here by mentioning about the news. As we have seen in the news in the recently, particularly this particular monsoon year, we can mention from the article which has been given in the news by highlighting that Indian monsoon, especially the monsoon is like a lifeline of the nation for a country like India. It is the lifeline of a nation for the country like India, but because of the variations, there is a deficit in the monsoon. There is around 4% of deficit in the monsoon, which is acting as a major factor affecting the availability of water for the people of India. So, this is how you can substantiate with respect to the fact or data that has been given in the particular newspaper article. Now, coming to the thing, after conclusion of introduction, after writing of introduction, we must go into body part. In body part, we need to discuss the few things. The first and foremost thing is that we have to explain the mechanism. So, let's explain the mechanism of occurrence of monsoon in India. So, here, the main reason for occurrence of monsoon is that differential heating between land and water. Differential heating between land and water. Why? Because if you have observed the location of India, it is at the confluence of Himalayas where Tibetan Plateau and Indian Ocean is being present here. So, the differential heating, between these Himalayan part and ocean is the major cause for occurrence of the monsoon. And the second mechanism that we can explain here is that because of the differences in heating of the land and water, and also especially because of the heating of the Tibetan Plateau, what happens is that pressure differences, low pressure and high pressure are being created between the Himalayas, especially Tibetan Plateau and this Indian Ocean. So, this causes the movement of wind from high pressure to low pressure area. And with these thing, ITCZ. So, this particular ITCZ normally around 5 degrees latitude near the equator it gets shifted to around 20 to 25 degrees latitudes. So it comes like exactly around topmost part of the India, middle and the topmost part of the India. Now this shift in the ITCZ, what it causes is that TEZ, tropical easterly jet stream, it starts coming into the India, whereas southwest tropical jet stream, it starts going above the top of the Himalayas, means north of the Himalayas. Initially, this particular jet stream is south of the Himalayas, but whenever this ITCZ has been advanced at 20 to 25 degrees particular point, now this TEZ enters India and this southwest jet stream goes or navigate to the north of the Himalayas. This is how the mechanism of monsoons is being explained. So this is the main mechanism of the monsoons. So this is the first part. So you need to draw a particular diagram and also you need to highlight each and every point in a cyclic format, like initially the heating of the Himalayan plateau and also which is causing the differences between the ocean and the Himalayas and Tibetan plateau. Now the second mechanism is shift of the ITCZ, and after that you need to understand and mention about the role of the jet stream. So this is the first body part, that is explaining the mechanism of Indian monsoon. Now, here it is also mentioning about highlight the major factors responsible for spatial and temporal variability. Now, let's see that particular part. This part is about spatial and temporal variability. So, first let's discuss about the spatial variability. So, what are the main reasons for occurrence of this spatial variability is that before going to understand this, you need to have basic knowledge on branches of Indian monsoon. There are majorly two branches of Indian monsoon. One is Arabian branch and second one is Bay of Bengal branch. The first and foremost is that Arabian branch is being divided into the first part gets supported at windward side of the Western Ghats, get interfaced with this, and the second part gets struck with the Mumbai, and the third part gets struck with the Saurashtra region. This is the Arabian branch. Now coming to the Bay of Bengal branch, while hitting at the Myanmar Arkanoma mountains, it will have two variations. One is one part reaches to Indo-Gangetic plains and other part will provide rainfall to all northeastern states. So these are the main branches, Arabian branch and Bay of Bengal branch, and the distribution of rainfall of the monsoons. Now here we need to understand this basic knowledge. Now let's see what are the spatial variations. The first and foremost spatial variation what we need to discuss here is that windward side of the Western Ghats is having huge amount of the rainfall, whereas the leeward side of the Western Ghats is not having proper rainfall. So leeward side versus windfall side differences in the rainfall is one of the spatial variability reason, and also variations in the jet streams. Variation in the jet streams criteria is also one of the factor affecting the monsoon spatial variability, and the position of the monsoon trough, which is causing monsoon break, is also one of the spatial factor. Monsoon break refers to failure of the monsoon in that particular year on that particular place, that is called as the monsoon break. Now, these are the factors responsible for the spatial variability of the Indian monsoon. Now, let's discuss temporal variability. Now, let's discuss the temporal variability of occurrence of the monsoon. Now, let's see the temporal variability of monsoons. The main reasons for temporal variability of Indian monsoons is that occurrence of El Nino. Occurrence of El Nino. This El Nino is nothing but warming of Eastern Pacific Ocean, especially which is causing deficit in the rainfall, which is the major reason for failure of the monsoons and temporal variation in monsoons. This El Nino occurs once in 2 to 7 years. Now, along with this, negative Indian dipole. So, Indian dipole is nothing but the differences between temperatures of Arabian Sea and this particularly Bay of Bengal, of part of Indian Ocean. So, the differences between especially Western and Eastern Indian Ocean, that is called as the Indian dipole, Indian Ocean dipole. Now, this negative Indian dipole is one of the major factor affecting the occurrence of the monsoons, which is leading to break or failure in the monsoons. This is how you need to understand about the El Nino and also Indian Ocean dipole, where here you can mention about La Nino, which is causing increase in the monsoon rainfall. This is what you need to understand from the spatial and the temporal variability of the monsoon. So here, what we did is that in the first part we explained about the mechanism. In the second part we explained about the spatial variability and also the temporal variability by understanding or drawing proper diagrams. So in these type of question, especially when the word explain has been given, what is important is that proper explanation of the mechanism is important. Instead of listing out the factors, how efficiently we are explaining the mechanism is important. Now, let's see how we can conclude it. Since Indian monsoon acts as the major reason for occurrence of rainfall in India, the anthropogenic factors which are responsible for monsoon break must be reduced, and also the water regeneration and less exploitation of groundwater must be done in order to avoid these kinds of variabilities among the Indian monsoon. This is how we are mentioning the conclusion by underscoring the problem and also the solution, especially anthropogenic solution to the given problem. So this is how you need to understand whenever a term called explain has been given, by explaining the proper mechanism of that particular question. Okay. So this is about the explain keyword. If you like the video, please like, share and subscribe to Vayu IAS Academy. Thank you.